by Mark. Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at will.
Hey, howdy. How are you? Hope you guys had a good couple of weeks with me being off. And I wasn't really off. I was doing a lot of stuff on Rumble because YouTube decided they didn't like me much. So, yeah, before we get too far into this, go ahead and check out the merchandise. Coffee, mugs, tumblers, shot glasses, you name it. We've got it all. Got this. There's one up there. You can see it, but this is one being used. But yeah. So this video is my launch back into being back on YouTube after a 2-week strike. I'd say I've got eight more days before one of my strikes is lifted. So, and then I have until March until the last strike the most recent strike disappears. And so we're dancing around some things. I'm covering certain topics only on Rumble, and other topics are fair game here. And this is one of them. And I think one of the reasons why this topic is so easy for me to talk about here on the wonderful world of YouTube is because YouTube doesn't know how to deal with people who are willing to critique law enforcement and government without talking about certain types of topics that YouTube has hook, line, and sinker taken the bait on and have decided to toe the regimist line. So it's fun to play on this one. I want to. The title's pretty self-explanatory: "Condition to Comply: Fascism, Tyranny, in Eudora, Arkansas." Well, part of it's not self-explanatory, but we will get to that because you guys are going to absolutely begin to spin in your proverbial graves when you hear what's going on. But we talk an awful lot about government-run schools within the ranks of libertarianism, within the ranks of normie-con conservatism, boomer cons. We're seeing a move now towards more and more people pulling their kids out of government schools. We're seeing a massive movement towards voucher systems, winning many victories, and lots of pushback. But really, what people are doing, what they're responding to, is the current state of education and the far left, completely radicalized ideals and propaganda that's being foisted on our children in government-run schools. Now, note, I'm not saying public schools, because we have to be, realist. And I use the term government here in a very loose sense. Most of you know I prefer to talk about the state. So, let's make the transition and then start to talk about state-run schools. And the reason that that's really important for us is to understand is that here in the United States of America, the several states, they're what we know as public schools are actually state-run schools, and they're relatively modern in that sense. When you talk to historians who are trying to play fast and loose with facts, they'll tell you, well, public schools started in the 1600s in the United States. The Puritans recognized the need for public education. Well, those weren't public schools, folks. Those were decentralized, localized education centers that were being ran and operated by the local churches. I mean, the Puritans were not. I mean, they were called separatists in Great Britain for a reason, because they weren't towing the monarchical and parliamentarian um, or parliamentary line. They and when they fled persecution to come to North America, they brought their ideals, their ideology, and their philosophical leanings with them, and they were very much intent on propagating their ideology, their Christian perspective, into their children and the children of the communities that they lived in, and into the villages and townships that they lived in. But, and I'm going to be doing a series talking about the modernization of state schools. But state schools have always been predominantly about educating your children, but not in the way that we think. And what state-run schools have done, they have conditioned us into compliance. And we've seen this play out an awful lot over the last almost 3 years now here in um, the Republic of the United States. And we saw that compliance lived out in the lives of adults, not just in children, but lived out in the lives of adults. If your local municipality, your local city state, your local county state, or your state or the federal state told you to do something, you did it. And that's the majority of you, the vast majority of you. Even within the confines of my immediate and extended family, that was just the case. Everybody told us to wear masks. So most of the people that I knew in my life were wearing masks. People that I see on a daily basis, they were wearing masks. Now that's their decision. Uh, but um, stay-at-home orders, the idea of essential and versus non-essential employees, personnel within essential businesses and non-essential businesses. People are conditioned to comply, and that is predominantly the product of government or state-run schools. It's beat into us every day. Comply, 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 comply. When a representative or an agent of the state tells you to do something, you're told to follow it, that they're to be trusted, which actually flies in the face of the historicity of the American Republic, of the experiment of the American constitutional republic. The whole gist of the American War for Independence was a steep and severe lack of trust for people in positions of power and authority. And I have so often quoted, Plato when he said that, and I'm going to paraphrase here, that in here or in there it lies the root of tyranny. That when a tyrant first comes to power, he comes in power to protect the people. C.S. Lewis, the great Christian philosopher, who I take some issue with on some things, uh, but he was still a wonderful philosopher. It has a quote that's much the same, that it's always about safety. It's always about your well-being. We're going to be tyrants to you for your well-being, for your safety, for your good. And what did we hear during the COOF pandemic? Well, you have to stay home because the state has told you to stay home. It's for your safety. You have to wear a mask because the state has told you to wear a mask, and it's for your safety and the safety of others. We're going to tell you that you can't work in your job because it's not essential for your safety. Don't worry though, we'll take care of you. We'll pay you. We'll give you money to live. Just comply. And vast majority of people in the republic complied, which tells me that we're a lot further along in losing the republic than anybody would care to admit. But once again, it's because we've been conditioned from early in education, and sadly within Christian education even. People are constantly being told, do whatever the authority tells you to do. Now, some people will point, especially within Christianity, to places like Romans 13 and others, where God tells us to comply, to submit. And I've had this conversation ad nauseum, and I'm not going to beat it up here, but that's really not what the scriptures are teaching. And we have to ask ourselves some really hard questions. If the American church is hell bent on matching its perspective with that of the state, there's a problem. And so these last almost 3 years now have taught us that they can get away with, the government, if the state can get away with whatever it wants to get away with, because the people will not resist. They will not stand up. They will not say no. They will not say, you've come this far and you'll go no further. They won't be Gandalf. None shall pass. They're not, for lack of better terminology, they're just not willing to resist, because churches and state operated, state ran centers of indoctrination are teaching people that agents of the state, especially agents of the state who wear a uniform that has a badge that identifies them as law enforcement, are to always and all at all time to be bowed down to be we are to be subservient to them. We are to do everything that they tell us to do. And the state counts on that. That's why it's beat into us at such a young age. I mean, I started school in 1975. And I could tell you through my experience, and many of you are going to relate to this, over and over and over and over again, we worshiped at the feet of law enforcement. And we treat them like heroes. We still call them heroes to this, and it's in the propaganda. The agenda has increased, and it's not just the conservatives who are out there beating the blue badge now, or drum now. It's the left. That should concern a lot of you who consider yourselves to be conservative. As a paleo-conservative, paleo-libertarian type, I don't feel that way. Now, that doesn't mean I have less love and respect for my friends and family members who are in law enforcement, the ones that are good at what they do, the ones who have remembered the oath that they take. But people in law enforcement don't get a pass from me. They don't get blanket automatic acceptance of the idea that everything they're doing is right. In fact, why would we do that? Conservatives especially hate government overreach. Well, they should. We've discovered that they're okay with government overreach as long as that governmental overreach, that state overreach, is erring on their side of the equation. So they love tyranny if it's tyranny that's being imposed on their ideological enemies or opponents on the left. They love that. But they hate state overreach into their lives when it's coming from the left and being foisted onto the right. So they're really hypocritical. The left and the right are very hypocritical. The left will decry abuses of minorities, which we all should. We should all decry abuse of any individual at all. Any public person, any free person in the United States should be free from state oppression, period, at all times. And when I say free person, I mean people who have committed no crimes, and by crime I mean crimes that actually have victims, like drug possession, not a crime. There's no victim. There's no victim. The state's victim. Seatbelt laws, that's not a crime, and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be a law. Who's the victim there? Who is a victim in that situation, right? So when I say a free person, I mean people who have not hurt others, who aren't hurting others, who aren't doing acts of aggression, who aren't committing theft, who aren't committing sexual assault, who aren't committing violence towards another person. I mean, free people should be free of oppression from the state and from all of her agents. We should all decry that. So we should agree with the left. Like black folk and Asian folk and Hispanic folk and other minorities, if you will, should be free from oppression. All of us should be free from that oppression. But the left only focuses on oppression when it's happening to a particular group of people because it helps them stay in power. It helps them gain popularity, right? And some of the most vocal uh, proponents of resisting oppression from the state are minorities. And the right, they want to be free from oppression as well. They want to be free from tax burdens that are bent at destroying their livelihood. They want to be free from being told where they can worship, how they can worship, if they can worship. They want to be free from that kind of oppression. We should all agree on that. We should all be in a place where nobody wants to be oppressed. And we should all recognize that oppression of one person is oppression of all people. Because if I'm silent when one person is oppressed by the state and her agents, acting in conjunction with a oligarchical, autocratic, despotic, regimist mentality, if I'm silent when I see that happen to one, then who's going to cry out for me? It goes to the Wiesenthals, or is it Weasel? I can't remember, but the poem that was written by the German, who said, well, when they came for so and so, I didn't stand, and they came for so and so, and I didn't stand. And when they came for me, there was no one left to stand for me. Right? There's a depth of powerful importance for us to understand there, and we don't. We've forgotten. And what do we know? Those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. And so there's hypocrisy on both the left and the right, where they're okay with their tyranny being imposed on other people as long as other people don't impose their tyranny on them. And so they hate those things. But what we've learned over the last few years is that both the left and the right will kowtow to tyranny. The vast majority of the left and the right will kowtow to tyranny. Now, some of the people on the left and some of the people on the right, and libertarian types have all kind of been, some of them, this small percentage of them have kind of been pushed into this loose camaraderie, this very strange mix of bedfellows, where some of us are finding ourselves aligned with people that, in many ideological ways, we have nothing in common with, but we recognize the oppression of free people by the state. And this is a move that's been happening in my life ideologically for a very long time. The last 3 years have accelerated that, and then the accelerant and the flame of that burning desire in me to be consistent with my ideology really came about when it was that force was brought to bear on me by the very people that I was working for within the law enforcement world. And so this change in me has also caused me to lose many people that I would have called friends, and even some family members. And I had somebody who I love and care for dearly said, well, now that you hate all cops, which, I chastised them and said, that's BS. You don't get to tell me that I hate all cops, because I don't. But the thing is this binary thought process is if you don't back up everything that law enforcement does, then you must hate cops. You must be one of those people that runs around chanting all cops are bastards. And I don't believe that. I hate that statement. I don't think all cops are bastards. I really don't. What I will tell you is that the vast majority of people who are entering into law enforcement today um, are coming out of the very system that has conditioned them to think that agents of the state are to be bowed down to. We could say a lot about law enforcement in the old days and the nepotism and the good old boys club that was there, but a lot of those people who have been in law enforcement for 15, 20, 25, 30 years at one time, they may, they said, look, no, I took an oath and this stuff is important to me. And those are the people that are getting forced out of that career field. I know one person who's like, I'm just counting down the days to my retirement. I can't do this anymore. And I keep like, well, maybe come up with something new to do now so you don't have to keep doing it, because it's clearly tearing you apart to be part of the system. And so what I would encourage all of you to do is to really think about why do you look at cops and see heroes? Why do you see heroes when you see cops? Are all cops heroes? No. The vast majority of cops aren't heroes. And even the cops that I know, people in law enforcement that I know, will tell you, I'm not a hero. I've never done anything heroic. But yet we see people out there who would be pissed off if they saw the American flag disgraced in any way, shape, or form, that do disgrace the American flag by changing its color scheme to that of a black and white and gray with a thin blue line running through it. Or the star field, where the stars are blue on black, because we support law enforcement. Have you thought about that? People who were pissed off at me for flying the American flag in the distress position, which is upside down, which is literally an acceptable presentation of the flag in a time of great distress, of especially in the military mindset. That's an acceptable presentation. There were people out there who were pissed off at me and attacking my integrity for disgracing the American flag, for flying it in the distress position, will themselves fly first responder flags and law enforcement back the blue flags without batting an eye. That is a disgrace to the flag. The flag is not a tool for you to hero worship, to bootlick at the feet of the state and her agents. So in this, as our country moves deeper and deeper into fascism, and it's moving deeper and deeper into fascism because of the left, not because of Donald Trump, who I can't stand. Everybody out there that worships Donald Trump as this great savior of the republic, they forget all of the stuff that he did that he was responsible for as president, that really hurt this country. Massive amounts of spending, accelerating the jab program, Operation Warp Speed, declaring a peacetime emergency in the United States that allowed all the governors who did it to step up and abuse their people and their populace. So all of this hero worship that's happening, hero worshiping of cops, hero worshiping of political figures, this move towards fascism by the left, this tyrannical mindset that's coming from both the left and the right in this country, was given a test run for the last few years, and they found out that we, for the most part, would comply when we're told that we'll lose our comfort and our peace and our ease and convenience if we don't comply. Well, just this last week, the city of Eudora, Arkansas, which a few years ago was 2,600 and some people, has just continued to bleed out people. And when I mean bleed out, I don't mean through violence, like they're dying. And it has, over the last few years, shrunk down to a city of 1,700 people. And just this week, they made this announcement.
Greetings, everyone, citizens of Eudora. As you all are well aware, our city has been recently plagued with senseless acts of violence, which has led me to declare a state of civil emergency curfew, effective immediately for all citizens between the hours of 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. The only exceptions would be for medical emergencies and for employment. The loitering statute will be strictly enforced during this time, and a copy of that statute can be picked up at City Hall. Should you be caught during curfew hours, you will be subject to being stopped and searched.
Now, we'll listen to the rest of the video, but I want you guys to just realize what you just heard there. First, I want to point out, if you go back to the start of this video, this lady was smiling. She's very excited to make this announcement. It's a city of 1,700 people, folks. They've had 2 murders this year. I live in a city of 2,600 people. We had 2 murders. Everybody would be talking about it. You know, murder is murder. It's horrible. But they've had 2 murders, and one of them very recently, which is what brought this up, this imposition of this curfew. Now, take a look at this potpourri that we have here. We have the mayor of this small town in Arkansas, who is the high potentate, declaring that we have determined that you will not leave your house after 8 for any other reason than a medical emergency or to travel to and from work. And then what she does is she lines her armed enforcement thugs up behind her in this imposing, like this, the positions they're standing in, this is orchestrated. This is choreographed. This is all choreographed. Right? We have the badge here, we have the badge here, we have the badge here, we have the badge here. We have this law enforcement presence standing behind her as the high and holy potentate of Eudora. They are there to send the message that we are the enforcement arm. You will do what we tell you to do. And then the statement that she made of, and let's go back and listen to that again.
During curfew hours, you will be subject to being stopped and searched.
You will be subject to being stopped and searched if you are found outside of your home during those curfew hours. Can anybody tell me what grounds do they have to stop you and search you in your car or the effects on your person? What grounds do they have legally, but more importantly, constitutionally, what grounds do they have to do that? Because some tart in a tiny little town in Arkansas has determined that we're going to lock you in your homes from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m., 10 hours. 10 hours. You are not allowed to leave your home because we've told you it's for your safety and it's for your good. And by God, if we catch you outside of your home, you will be stripped of your constitutionally enshrined liberties to be free from unreasonable search and seizure, to be free to travel, to be free in your property, to be free in your personal effects, to be free from kidnapping in the hands of armed thugs. But it's okay because it's for your safety.
Other agencies have been contacted in order to assist with this endeavor. There will be a town hall meeting on Thursday, December 29th at 6 p.m. at the Commerce Building to give an update to all citizens about the recent acts of violence that have occurred in our city. Please, ma'am, please, sir, your assistance is greatly appreciated and it is needed. If you have any information that can be used towards a possible arrest, please contact Bill Sadler of the Little Rock, Arkansas State Police.
Now, I'm hoping that what she means is any information that could be used towards an arrest of whoever committed the murder. I hope that's what she means, but she didn't say that. And she's pleading with the public now to snitch on their neighbors. They are creating the very same thing that was created in so many states and so many municipalities and so many jurisdictions during the COOF pandemic, where governors and mayors and county commissioners created hotlines for you to call and turn in your neighbors for having gatherings in their home when they weren't allowed to, for not wearing masks when they are told they have to. This is tyranny. Tyranny. And you have been conditioned to comply because you've been told that these men are your authority. And when I mean your authority, not like you have authority because of them, but they are authorities over you. And only one of them, quite frankly, seems to be registering any kind of emotion at all about this. And that's this guy over here on the screen right, who, when he's hearing this, he looks like, what in the French toast am I being put into? Like, you see it. He's just like, oh my gosh. I'm a black man. This kind of stuff was used against my ancestors in this country. And I want the irony of this to set in. I guarantee you that this woman is a leftist. I guarantee you she's a leftist. Not because she's black, but because you can hear it in what she's saying. And the irony is that she would be probably one of the first who would see a minority abused by law enforcement and would be out marching in the streets, who would be okay with violent protests over George Floyd or Jacob Burke. And it does really seem to be registering on this guy. You can see it. There's a sorrow in his face. These two stony demeanored individuals seem to be like, yeah, I'm a cop, and I'm looking forward to doing this. These four people right here, every single one of them should have said, I'm not taking part in this. That's a violation of my oath of office. That's a violation of the oath that I took when I took this job. The very substance of this curfew, which has now been extended into the new year, 2023, is a violation of the Constitution. She should be stripped of her position, and every single one of these men, if they did anything at all that resembles compliance with this order, should all lose their jobs and be imprisoned as enemies of the Constitution. But let's let the despot finish.
Or call the Arkansas State Police tip hotline at 501-618-8000. Please help us bring these senseless acts of crime to a stop. Thank you. Police tip hotline at 501-618-8000. Please help us bring these senseless acts of crime to a stop.
What will you do, folks, when it's your hometown? What will you do when it happens to you? The constitutional violations in this are astounding. And we can have a lot of conversations about the Constitution and the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Arkansas and the Constitution of every other individual state. But what I could tell you is that predominantly almost every state's constitution looks almost exactly like the Constitution of the federal state, of the United States Constitution. And whether there are people like me out there who look at something like the 14th Amendment It exists. The 14th Amendment exists, which causes equal protection to fall then onto the shoulders of every single entity, every single state entity across the Republic now is obligated to keep and defend the Constitution of the United States and to keep and defend the Republic free from its enemies, both foreign and domestic. The city of Eudora, Arkansas, should be the kind of city in rural, agricultural, small town, southern living where black, whites, and Hispanics should all have rose up and said, screw you, Madam Mayor, screw you, Eudora Police Department. We're not complying. Arrest us all. There should have been good old boys of every ethnicity who said, we're not doing this. You aren't taking our freedoms away because of some other criminal who's literally actually victimizing people. Because now the city-state of Eudora, Arkansas, is now victimizing all of her citizens. And the cops are okay with it. And the reason that you know the cops are okay with it is because no one's come out and spoke out against it. I can't find a word from anybody in law enforcement in the Eudora area who hasn't said, or who has said, this is a good idea. We need to do this. And so even if they're silently talking amongst themselves or to themselves, saying this is a really bad idea, but they're still doing it, they're not good cops. Just following orders because someone said this is for the safety of the people does not make you a good cop. It makes you an enemy of the Republic. It makes you an enemy of the people you serve. It makes you a tyrant. It makes you a thug. It makes you a criminal. What will you do, Minnesota? What will you do, Wisconsin, Iowa, Texas, Florida, California, Washington State, Oregon, Idaho, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, New York? What will you do? I'll tell you what you'll do. You'll do what you've been doing for the last 3 years. You'll comply. Because you've been conditioned to comply. Because you've been told to bow at the feet of men with guns and badges, and women with guns and badges, and with people who hold positions of authority, mayors and town councils and city councils and county commissions and governors and state patrol officers. You've been conditioned to do what they tell you to do for fear of losing your comfort and your ease. You brought this on yourselves, America. You've brought this on yourself, Eudora, Arkansas. You've brought this on yourself, people of this republic. You have no one to blame but you. You don't get to blame Joe Biden. You don't get to blame Nancy Pelosi. You don't get to blame Donald Trump. You don't get to blame Pence. You don't get to blame anybody. You blame you. You did this. You created this. You caused this to happen. This is on you. This is your fault. You have no one to blame but you. End of story. And the only people who can change it, the only people who can fix it are you. You and your friends. You and your family. But many of you won't. Even you so-called constitutionally minded people, you won't. Because you worship at the feet of the state and her armed agents and her armed thugs. I dare you to prove me wrong. I dare you. Prove me wrong. But I can almost guarantee you I'm going to get a lot of pushback, and it's going to be from a bunch of bootlicking, state-worshipping conservatives. And leftists. And you guys have a lot more in common with each other than you do with me. So I'd implore you, my friends, until next time, fight for your liberty, it is yours. Fight for your freedom, it belongs to you. And Sic Semper, Tyrannus.
We are go for liftoff in T-minus 30. Stand by target. You are authorized to fire at will.